Hey y'all, my name is Christian. I'm a millennial, and this is the Millennial Mind. Millennials get a bad rap for being lazy, non productive members of society. We also get told that our opinions are warped and don't matter. This podcast is designed to express a point of view on the world as a whole, but from a millennial's perspective. I will talk about love, current events, pretty much everything that comes to mind. Come join me on this journey on speaking my mind, and I would love for you to speak your mind as well. Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of The Millennial Mind. Thank you for tuning in to another episode, taking time out of your busy schedule in order to hear me talk. I really appreciate it and I do not take it lightly. Just putting this out there, I'm so sorry that I missed my usual publish date for the episodes, which is on Thursday. Life just happened. My husband, he was on vacation, so I was enjoying that. And on Friday, I had a Sierra concert that I went to, which was amazing. Amazing. So I've just been pretty much kicking it. So thus this episode coming out on Saturday instead of Thursday, but I promise I'm going to get right back on track. So I wanted to get right into the episode, and what I wanted to talk about with you guys was therapy. So as an African American, I'll just let you know what the stigma is within our community pertaining to therapy. Black people, we don't like it. We don't advocate for it because we think, oh, therapy? I'm not crazy. I don't need to do that. But therapy is not just reactive, it's proactive as well. So I'll get into that in a minute. But first, I wanted to give you a background as far as where therapy came from. Therapy actually began in the early 19th century. Sigmund Freud and A.A. Brill, they were the pioneers for therapy and really getting it off its feet and showing it to the world. Since then, people have benefited from therapy in that it has helped them with their mental and emotional issues such as anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, etc. We see a lot of people swear by it. In my life, I've seen a lot of people swear by it, primarily Caucasian people. They they always go to therapy. You always hear them having a good relationship with their therapist. Like they go to the therapist like it's their primary care doctor, which is something that we all should be doing. So why aren't Black people active participants in therapy? And like I was saying before, a lot of Black people, they're not active participants in therapy because they thought that they didn't need it. They thought that they weren't crazy, so why should I go to a therapist? Because I'm not crazy. And I think sometimes we say that and don't really know what we're saying. Because therapists, just like a doctor, you not only go to the doctor, a medical doctor, when something bad has happened, like you get a cold or you get some kind of virus or bacteria that you're trying to get rid of, but you also do physicals every year in order to be proactive so that if there's something that the doctor may find, then they jump on it right away in order to prevent the issue from getting bigger and out of control. Same thing with a therapist with your mental health. Not only do you want to go to be reactive, which I hope it doesn't get to that point where we're going at the point where we're trying to minimize the damage that has already been done. But we want to be proactive too to prevent us from having that mental or emotional break that could affect the whole course of our lives. So that's one reason why Black people aren't active participants. They feel like they didn't need it. Another reason is they thought that they could shout and pray it away. Now this is a this may be a touchy subject for a lot of people. So in the Black community, church is like a huge factor into our culture. Church was a way that we dealt with slavery. It's the way that we dealt with pain. Like, God was our source for everything. And me being a Christian, that's still the case for me today. Like, God is the source of everything that I do. But I think a lot of Black people, they almost take God and use it as a crutch in which they don't do their part. Okay? So the Bible says faith without works is dead. So it's good to have faith. It's good to have that belief. But that in conjunction with you doing your part is where you're going to see some progress. It's where you're going to see some results. A lot of Black people, they felt like their faith in God with shouting and praying, that would get rid of all of their issues. Which, that's part of the equation. You definitely want to pray. You definitely want to have faith in God. But then while you're doing that, God is saying, like, you got to do your part too. Like, I'm giving you all the tools that you need. Yes, you prayed to me. I'm giving you the tools. You got to use them in order to see results. So, and that's something that we weren't doing. We were thinking like, oh, if I pray these issues away, if I shout in church, every Sunday, this is going to get rid of all my issues. No. And that is true. And somebody may argue with me about it. That's fine. We can have an intelligent debate. But no, prayer by itself, shouting by itself, is not going to get rid of all of your issues. Like I was saying, faith without works is dead. Faith plus you doing your part equals results. And that's pretty much what the Bible says. So that was another reason why Black people aren't active participants. They felt like their faith could get rid of their issues. No, you still have to do your part. And because of these reasons why Black people haven't done therapy, we have so many children and adults dealing with issues that developed from years of mental and emotional abuse, let alone physical abuse. I've been in contact with so many individuals where they do certain things where I think in my head, like, oh, if they would have went to therapy, maybe that would help them with that issue. Like, for example, I may run in contact with a guy whose father left him as a child, but then he has a child and does the same thing. That affected him. So when his father left him, that affected him to the point where he's now redoing the cycle in his own child's life. And I'm thinking if he would have went to therapy in order to talk about those issues and kind of deal with them the best way he could, how that would have impacted his own life and how he raised his own kids. I know my dad, he had the same issue where Um, his father wasn't as active in his life because of alcohol abuse, um, and no telling what else. But my dad, he made up in his mind, I'm not going to treat my kids the same way that my father treated me. But I wonder if he would have went to therapy, like how much more better he could have been. Because my dad, he was an excellent father. Excellent. Like I feel like that with the situation he went through, like he defied the odds 100%. But I also wonder, like, if he would have talked about his issues with a therapist, like how much more of a better parent he would be. I don't know. But it's just something to think about. One thing that I can say is that millennials have taken the initiative to become better and learn from the mistakes of past generations. I've heard of so many millennials going to therapy regularly. Like, I have friends who said, like, yeah, I have monthly appointments with my therapist in order to get through my issues. And I'm like, that's incredible. And that's very courageous for you to admit, especially with the stigma of therapy being only for crazy people. So I certainly admire people who do take that step to do therapy. I've also taken this, or I've also have taken the step of doing therapy myself. So maybe I would say within the last 6 months, I had a lot going on with work, with my own personal life, and I just started to feel overwhelmed. Overwhelmed to the point where I felt it physically. Like I felt a tightness in my chest. I felt like I felt stressed all the time. I couldn't sleep. I was overeating. It was just a lot going on. And so what I decided to do was to, and you know what, let me back up. Before it got to that point, it was like one specific day that I remember that I went to the doctor and my blood pressure was like sky high. It was like 160 over 110, which my blood pressure is usually controlled. So for it to be high, something was going on. So I was like, okay, that's not normal. And I felt like I was at the point where I should have went to the hospital, but I did not. I did not. I stayed at work, which was horrible on my end, because I really could have like did some damage to my body. But I believe it was like the next day or maybe the day after I went to the doctor and kind of got control over my blood pressure. But my blood pressure wasn't the root of my issues. It was dealing with stress, dealing with my own personal issues. If I got control over that, then that would help with my blood pressure and help me not to be stressed and make me feel like I had to go to the hospital. So I made the conscious decision of making an appointment to go to a therapist. And when I tell you that my therapist has read my whole life, she has read my whole life. And a therapist, it's not like they tell you something that you don't already know. Like a lot of it is common sense. But for some reason, it takes someone else, an objective person, a neutral party who doesn't know you from Adam, to come and tell you these things for it to click. Like, for example, my therapist, she asked me, what my work day was like, what an average work day was like. So I told her, I would come in. Of course, I would have like a protein shake or something that I would drink. So I would drink that in the morning while at work and then pretty much work the entire day and, you know, get off work and eat dinner. And so she would ask me if I would take breaks. I'm like, no, I usually skip lunch or whatever because I'm in a groove. I don't want to break that. I just want to be productive. And so she stared at me. She was like, that's not normal, right? And I just sat there kind of defeated. I sat there real defeated. But I'm like, you know what? That's true. That's not normal. Like, it's not normal to only have a protein shake in the morning and then work and then not eat until 8 o'clock that night. Like, it's not normal at all. Like, I'm doing my body a lot of damage. So it took her to say that because my mom was saying it, my dad was saying it, even my husband was saying it. But it took somebody who didn't know me from Adam to come and say, hey, you need to be a lot more nicer to yourself for it to actually click in my brain. Hey, Christian, you need to be nicer to yourself. So just having that neutral party to talk to was life-changing for me. It's therapeutic to speak to someone about your issues, someone who's not going to judge you. And that's what I love. It's a judgment-free zone. You're not going to have, somebody to express their opinion as far as what they think you should do. If so, it'll be strictly from a therapeutic perspective. But you won't have like a lay person, I should say, saying like, oh, well, what I think you should do is this, because that may not work for you. You have someone who's being very objective and they're coming from a good place. So it's always therapeutic to speak to someone about your issues. But you know what else is therapeutic and what has helped me in speaking about my issues? Is speaking about my thoughts and ideas on the podcast platform. And Anchor makes it so easy for me to do. So I would like for you to take a listen on this ad pertaining to Anchor. This podcast is sponsored by Anchor. Anchor is the easiest way to make a podcast. It gives you everything you need in one place for free, which you can use right from your phone or computer. Creation tools allow you to record and edit your podcast so it sounds great. They'll distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard everywhere, even on platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more. You can easily make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Download the Anchor app today or go to anchor.fm to get started. Once again, you can download the Anchor app, that's ANCHOR, or go to anchor.fm to get started. So like the ad said, Anchor is super easy to use. I'm actually using it right now to record this episode. So if you want to start your podcast journey, make sure to download the Anchor app or go to the Anchor website on your computer and get started. But getting back to our discussion on therapy, I wanted to talk about why therapy is just so good and so useful to have in your life. So one, it returns you to a healthy or healthier status. like I was saying before, just like we have a medical doctor to help us with our physical needs, therapy works the same way for your mental and emotional needs. So you're being proactive in that you're making sure that any mental or emotional breaks are being prevented. And then maybe in some respects, you're being reactive. You're trying to lessen or mitigate the damage that has already been done from any mental or emotional break that you had. That's something that a physical doctor can't do. That's something that a friend can't help you with. Um, therapists, they are trained in this. This is their job for them to do. So let them help you get back to that status of just being healthy mentally and emotionally. It also helps you to make personal changes. Now, with my therapy sessions, my therapist has given me tools that I can use in order to be more successful mentally and emotionally. Um, it's helped me to make some changes in order to keep that consistency, because that's something that we all need. Not just to go to therapy and just listen, but you also got to utilize the tools that they're giving you, which may cause you to make certain changes in your life in order to utilize those tools and help you to be more consistent. So that's another thing. It also helps you to resolve your issues with guidance and support. This is another thing, because when I went to therapy and we started talking about my background, I was just in tears. And I was trying to figure out why. And it wasn't like, them cute tears. It was like crocodile tears, boogers all up in my nose. you know, um, Getting loads and loads of tissue and it's just not being enough. I had some unresolved issues from like childhood that I needed to get control of or needed to resolve because it was affecting me in my adult life. And subconsciously, I knew that. I I knew that was the case, but it took someone else to kind of bring that out, because basically what I was doing was keeping those issues dormant and kind of sweeping them under the rug because I didn't want to deal with them, because it brought up a lot of hurt and shame, and I didn't want, I just didn't want to deal with it. I felt like, oh, that was childhood. I'm an adult now. It's time for me to adult. But in order for me to adult, I have to address these issues that have affected me like slowly but surely. It's been like a virus that I just have not gotten an antibiotic for. You see what I'm saying? It just at some point I have to address it, or else it's going to be a break. It's going to be some kind of mental or emotional break, and I'm going to spiral out of control. So the therapists, they help you to resolve these issues. They're your support system. They are a guide to help you with those issues. So that's another reason why therapy is good. It also makes you accountable for your actions. Oh my goodness. This is key. So when you have finally resolved those issues from childhood or adulthood, and you finally get the tools that you can utilize in order to help you to get over those issues, and when you finally do, moving forward, you can't blame that trauma that may have happened prior to as to why you're not successful today. You just can't do it. Now at this point, you've taken the step to obtain a therapist. You've utilized the tools that he or she may have given you. Now moving forward, it's all you. Whatever happens, it's all you. You can't blame past actions. You can't blame past mistakes. Moving forward is you. So how you make your life, or what you make of your life, that's all on you now. So, and my therapist, she has really hounded that for me. Like, okay, you had some trauma, when you were younger, but now I'm giving you the tools. Are you going to use them? Because moving forward, you can't blame that anymore, your childhood trauma anymore, for why you're the way that you are. We've already established that. Now, are you going to keep blaming that? Or are you going to actually utilize the tools that I've given you in order to move forward in life? So, she's really good for that. And any good therapist will give you that advice also. One thing that I have also done that has really helped me, and really helped me in deciding whether or not I wanted to actually get a therapist, is I actually listened to this podcast called Therapy for Black Girls by Dr. Joy Harden Bradford. This is not an ad for her podcast, but it was really helpful because it gave me like mini therapy sessions without me having to pay for them. And of course, it didn't take the place of therapy sessions, but it was like really close. They, or she rather, Dr. Joy, gave tools for pretty much everything, dealing with depression, dealing with childhood trauma, what to do if you've been like sexually assaulted or raped. It was just everything. Any issue that you could think of, she's talked about it in some respect, or had some other professional to come on her show to talk about it. So if you don't listen to Therapy for Black Girls, I would highly suggest you to do so. It's on Apple Podcasts. It's on Spotify, I believe. It's pretty much everywhere. And if you go on her website, she actually has a directory where you can find a therapist that's in your area, which is huge. And that's actually how I found my therapist. So I would suggest, if you don't know of any therapists in your area, definitely Google Therapy for Black Girls, go through her little directory, and see what therapist is in your area, because she pretty much has, the directory is extensive. So it shouldn't be hard to find a therapist in your area. But that's all that I have for you all on therapy. I hope that you've enjoyed this episode. I hope that it's giving you some light on therapy. And I hope that you'll utilize the beauty of therapy, because it really helps. It really helps not only mentally and emotionally, but we all know that mental health and emotional health affects your physical health. So it just starts there. It really does. So I hope that you've enjoyed it. Make sure, if you have any questions or any comments pertaining to this episode, make sure that you email me at mindofmillennials@gmail.com. Also, make sure to like my Facebook page, The Millennial Mind, and just so that you can have more updates as far as the podcast and what we discussed and what we plan to discuss. Make sure that you follow the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, Pocket Cast. We are doing big things, so I'm so excited. And of course, I always like to have a quote that is something that we could think about. So here's the quote that I have for this week. Mental strength is not the ability to stay out of the darkness. It's the ability to sit present in the darkness, knowing that the light will shine again. So thank you all so much for listening, and I will see you all next week.